My daughter sent me a text. Don't come to my wedding. My husband hates you, and we don't want you ruining our wedding. I smiled calmly and silently froze their bank accounts. By dawn, 118 missed calls from them. She thought she could betray the father who paid for her entire life without consequences. But payback was coming. Before listening to this story, we have an important announcement for you. Unfortunately, we are discontinuing this channel, and it will be deleted soon. If you want to continue listening to new stories, subscribe to our new channel, Cold Revenge. The link to it will be in the collaboration with this video, in the description of this video, and in the comments. Thank you for your attention. My name is Richard Coleman. I'm 67 years old, and I live in a quiet house on Providence Road in Charlotte, North Carolina. Spent 35 years working my way up from bank teller to branch manager at Truist Bank before retiring 2 years ago. I always believed that family loyalty was a two-way street. Turns out some people think it only runs one direction. My daughter Ashley is 32 now, beautiful, smart, graduated from Duke University with a degree in marketing. I paid every penny of that education, $127,000 total. Never asked for a thank you, never held it over her head. That's what fathers do, right? After her mother, Julia, and I divorced 15 years ago, Julia moved to Florida to find herself, and Ashley stayed with me. We had a good relationship then. She'd come home from school, tell me about her day. We'd cook dinner together. Simple things, happy things. Everything changed about a year ago when she met Troy Clarkson. He's 35, runs some kind of digital marketing agency called Apex Digital Solutions. From day one, something about him rubbed me wrong. The way he'd look at my Toyota Camry with barely concealed contempt. The way he'd talk about his entrepreneurial success and his investment portfolio. The way he'd mention his father's development company every 10 minutes, like he'd built it himself. Ashley started changing around him. Small things at first. She stopped coming over for our Sunday lunches, too busy with Troy's social circle. Then she started making comments about my modest lifestyle. One time she actually said, "Dad, don't you think it's time to upgrade your car? Troy's friends might see us." I laughed it off, but it stung. I'd helped her buy that Honda CR-V she drives, $200 down payment from my pocket. But apparently that wasn't enough to earn me respect in her new world. The wedding planning started 6 months ago. Ashley was excited, showing me venues, flower arrangements, talking about her dream day. I told her I'd take care of it, all of it. The venue, the catering, the whole thing. She hugged me, tears in her eyes, said I was the best father anyone could ask for. That was 4 months ago. Then the tone started shifting. Phone calls became shorter. She'd cancel our coffee meetings. Troy was always too busy to join us for dinner when I invited them over. I'd see posts on social media, Ashley and Troy at fancy restaurants, on weekend trips to the mountains, always with Troy's friends. Never an invitation for me. 3 weeks ago, Ashley came by to pick up some documents for the wedding planner. She seemed nervous, kept checking her phone. Troy was texting her constantly. When she left, she didn't hug me, just a quick wave from the car. That's when I knew something had fundamentally broken. The wedding was scheduled for next Saturday. The venue is booked at the Ballantine Hotel, 160 guests invited, everything paid for and arranged. I transferred $6,500 to the wedding planner over the past 6 months, covering every detail Ashley dreamed about. White roses, string quartet, premium open bar, the works. It was a Friday evening when my phone buzzed. A text message from Ashley. I was sitting in my living room watching the clock collection I'd spent 20 years building. Mechanical timepieces from different eras, each one telling its own story about patience and precision. My favorite, a Swiss Longines from 1887, was ticking quietly on the shelf. I picked up my phone, expecting the usual update about seating arrangements or menu choices. "Dad, don't come to my wedding." I read it 3 times. Sure, I'd misunderstood. "Troy hates you and says you're a pathetic failure. We don't want you ruining our wedding with your presence. Sorry." I sat there, phone in my hand, staring at those words. Pathetic failure. From my own daughter. The daughter I'd raised alone for 15 years. The daughter whose college tuition I'd paid in full. The daughter whose first apartment I'd helped buy, $45,000 down payment. The daughter whose wedding I'd fully funded. Something strange happened then. Instead of anger or hurt, I felt something else. Something cold and clear, like a calculation clicking into place. I thought about those trust accounts I'd set up for Ashley when she was 18. Revocable living trusts, structured perfectly by my lawyer, Mark Davidson. Ashley had access to the money, could use the cards, but technically, until she turned 35, I maintained control as the trustee. She had no idea how those accounts actually worked. She just saw money in her checking account and assumed it was hers. Free and clear. But it wasn't. Not legally. Not yet. I looked at that text message one more time. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I smiled. The clock on my wall read 11:47 p.m. I wasn't sleeping. Instead, I was in my home office, surrounded by file folders I hadn't opened in months. Trust documents, bank statements, power of attorney forms, all the careful financial planning I'd done for Ashley's future, now spread across my desk like evidence in a case. $284,000. That's what remained in Ashley's trust accounts after I'd covered her education, her car, her apartment down payment, and her wedding. Money I'd carefully saved and invested for 15 years, intended to give her security and independence. Money she thought was simply hers. I remembered the day I set up these trusts. Ashley had just turned 18. Julia had moved to Florida the year before, and I was sitting in Mark Davidson's office learning about estate planning. Mark was thorough, explaining how a revocable living trust would protect Ashley's inheritance while teaching her financial responsibility. Set the age at 35, he'd advised, old enough to be mature, young enough to enjoy it. I'd agreed, signed all the documents, never told Ashley the full details because I didn't want her to feel controlled. I just gave her access to the cards and told her to be responsible. She never asked questions. Why would she? Money appeared when she needed it. That was enough. Now I pulled up the trust documents on my computer. Every word suddenly felt significant. The trustee shall have full discretion to manage and distribute trust assets. That was me, the trustee. Not Ashley, not yet. Not for another 3 years. At 11:58 p.m., I picked up my phone and called Mark's office line, leaving a detailed voicemail. Mark, it's Richard Coleman. I need to meet Monday morning, first thing. It's about Ashley's trust. We need to review the terms and discuss some adjustments. It's urgent. Then I called James Wilson, my former colleague at Truist Bank. James now worked in account operations. We'd started as tellers together back in 1988, climbed the ladder at roughly the same pace, maintained a friendship built on mutual respect. At midnight, his phone rang 4 times before he answered. Groggy. Richard, it's midnight. Everything okay? James, I need a favor. Remember those trust accounts under my name? The ones for my daughter? Yeah, the Coleman family trust accounts. What about them? I need them frozen. Technical review. 72 hours. Can you process that tonight? There was a pause. James knew me well enough not to ask too many questions. You're sure about this? Completely sure. Consider it done. I'll put the hold in the system right now. They'll be frozen by morning. Thanks, James. I owe you one. You owe me an explanation eventually, but yeah, we're good. I hung up and sat back in my chair. The house was completely silent except for the ticking of my watches, each one marking time with mechanical precision. No emotions, no second guessing. Just steady, reliable movement forward. I thought about Ashley as a little girl, 7 years old, gap-toothed smile, running to hug me when I came home from work. We'd make pancakes on Saturday mornings, shaped like Mickey Mouse because that made her laugh. She'd tell me about school, about her friends, about the boy who pulled her hair on the playground. I taught her to stand up for herself, to value herself. Where had that girl gone? I remembered her high school graduation. She'd given a speech about resilience and family support. She'd looked right at me in the audience and said, "My dad taught me that integrity matters more than appearances." The whole auditorium applauded. I'd felt so proud. 4 years later, when she graduated from Duke, I drove up for the ceremony. She introduced me to her friends, showed me around campus. We had dinner at her favorite restaurant. She told me she was thinking about moving back to Charlotte, maybe finding a marketing job here. "I want to be close to you, Dad," she'd said. "You're my rock." When did rock become pathetic failure? The change was gradual, then sudden. Troy entered her life like a storm system, bringing new values, new priorities. Suddenly, my middle-class life wasn't impressive enough. My steady career wasn't entrepreneurial enough. My reliability wasn't exciting enough. I pulled up Ashley's social media on my laptop. Photo after photo of her and Troy at expensive restaurants, luxury hotels, weekend getaways, designer clothes, high-end cocktails, the life of Instagram success. All of it funded by the trust accounts I'd created. Money I'd earned through 35 years of showing up every day, managing customer accounts, making sound financial decisions. But I was the failure. Right. The sky was starting to lighten outside my window. Dawn comes early in May. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open. At exactly 4:30 a.m., I logged into the bank's trustee portal and confirmed the account freeze. Every card linked to those accounts would decline by sunrise. Every automatic payment would bounce. Every ATM withdrawal would fail. Ashley had gotten comfortable in her comfortable life. Time to show her what happened when comfort disappeared. I finished my coffee, closed my laptop, and went to bed. Slept better than I had in months. When I woke up at 7:34 a.m., my phone screen was glowing like a Christmas tree. 43 missed calls from Ashley. 38 from a number I didn't recognize, probably Troy. 27 from various other numbers. 10 text messages, each more panicked than the last. "Dad, what did you do?" "Dad, our cards aren't working." "Dad, answer your phone." "This isn't funny, we need that money for the wedding." "Dad, please, I'm begging you." I read each message slowly, sipping my morning coffee. Then I turned my phone to silent and went to make breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice. Took my time. Enjoyed every bite. Outside my kitchen window, the morning sun was bright and clear. Perfect weather for a Saturday. Perfect weather for people to learn valuable lessons about respect, gratitude, and consequences. I smiled again, that same cold smile from last night. The game had just begun, and unlike Ashley, I actually understood the rules. By midday, my phone showed 118 missed calls. 118. I'd counted them while watering my orchids on the back porch, taking my time with each plant. The Saturday morning air was warm, carrying the scent of magnolias from my neighbor's yard. Perfect day for gardening. Perfect day for watching consequences unfold. I made myself a proper lunch, grilled chicken sandwich, chips, iced tea, and ate it at the kitchen table while reading the Charlotte Observer. The Hornets had lost again. Real estate prices were climbing in Myers Park. Life continued as normal for everyone except Ashley and Troy. My phone buzzed constantly on the counter, face down. I ignored it. There's a particular satisfaction in choosing silence when others are screaming for your attention. Each ignored call was a small lesson in respect, or rather, the absence of it. At 2:20 p.m., my doorbell rang, then rang again. Then someone started pounding on the door. I took my time getting up, walking through the living room where my watch collection ticked peacefully on their display shelves. Through the window, I could see Ashley's Honda CR-V, the one I'd helped her buy, parked crooked in my driveway, one wheel on the lawn. When I opened the door, the scene was almost comical. Ashley's face was blotchy from crying. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. Her hair, usually perfectly styled, looked like she'd been running her hands through it for hours. Troy stood behind her, his face an alarming shade of red, veins visible on his neck. He was wearing an expensive-looking polo shirt and designer jeans, probably charged to one of those maxed-out credit cards I didn't know about yet. "Dad!" Ashley pushed past me into the house. "What did you do? Our cards aren't working. None of them." Troy followed her in without being invited. "Mr. Coleman, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this is ridiculous. We have a wedding to pay for. Do you understand that? A wedding." I closed the door slowly and turned to face them. "Would either of you like something to drink? I have iced tea, water." "We don't want iced tea," Troy's voice cracked. "We want to know why our bank accounts are frozen." "Your bank accounts?" I walked to the kitchen and poured myself more tea. Let them follow me. Let them wait. "Troy, I'm curious. Which accounts are you referring to?" Ashley was pacing my kitchen floor, her heels clicking frantically. Dad, please. The hotel needs the final payment today. $22,400. The caterer needs their deposit. The florist called this morning. Everything is falling apart. 22,400, I repeated, savoring my tea. That's a specific number. Yes, she practically shouted. The final balloon payment for the venue. It was supposed to come out of my account automatically this morning, but it declined. Everything declined. The gas station, the coffee shop, even the grocery store. Troy's cards, too. All of them. I set my glass down carefully. And whose money is in those accounts, Ashley? She stopped pacing, stared at me. What? It's a simple question. Whose money? It's mine. You gave it to me. For college, for the apartment, for... I gave you access to it, I corrected. There's a difference. Those accounts are part of a revocable living trust. Do you know what that means? Her face went blank. A trust? Troy stepped forward, trying to take control. Mr. Coleman, I don't care about technicalities. Ashley has been using those accounts for years. That makes them hers. Now, either you unlock them, or we'll get a lawyer. A lawyer, I smiled. Excellent idea. I actually have a very good one. His name is Mark Davidson. Maybe you've heard of him. He specializes in trust law. He's the one who set up Ashley's accounts 15 years ago, with very specific terms. Troy's confident expression wavered. What terms? The terms that make me the trustee with full discretionary control until Ashley turns 35. She's 32 now. That means I have 3 more years of legal authority over every penny in those accounts. Ashley sank into one of my kitchen chairs. Dad, you never told me that. You never asked. You just spent the money. I leaned against the counter, watching them both. Let me ask you something, Troy. That text message Ashley sent me yesterday, the one calling me a pathetic failure, those were your words, weren't they? His jaw clenched. He didn't answer. Of course they were. Ashley wouldn't use that phrase. She knows I spent 35 years building a career, managing millions of dollars in assets, supporting our family. But you convinced her I wasn't good enough for your new lifestyle, didn't you? Dad, I'm sorry, Ashley started. Here's what confuses me, I continued, ignoring her apology. You didn't want me at your wedding, Ashley. You said I would ruin it with my presence, but you still expected me to pay for it. How does that work exactly? Troy's face was transitioning from red to purple. This is extortion. No, this is consequences. I straightened up. Here's your choice. The wedding can proceed as planned. All you need to do is stand up in front of your 160 guests and explain that everything, the venue, the food, the flowers, the dress you're wearing, Ashley, was paid for by the pathetic failure you didn't want there. Publicly acknowledge who funded your perfect day. Do that, and I'll release the funds. Ashley's eyes went wide. In front of everyone? Everyone. Or you can find another way to pay for it yourselves. I picked up my phone and started scrolling through the missed calls. I see you've been trying to reach me. 118 times. That's interesting. When did I become important enough to call back? Troy grabbed Ashley's arm. This is insane. We're not doing that. We'll figure something else out. Will you? I met his eyes. With what money, Troy? Your successful marketing agency? The one in the South Park Business District with the expensive rent? His grip on Ashley's arm tightened. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise? Fear? I'd hit a nerve. We're leaving, he said. Come on, Ashley. Ashley looked between us, tears streaming down her face now. Dad, please. I'll apologize privately, just us. I'll explain everything. Public or nothing, I said quietly. You made your choice about me publicly in that text message. Now make your choice about the truth publicly. They left. Troy practically dragged Ashley out the door. I watched through the window as they sat in the car for 15 minutes, arguing. I could see Troy's hands gesturing angrily, see Ashley crying. Finally they drove away, the Honda's tires squealing on the pavement. I returned to my home office and opened my laptop. Time to make some calls. First, Mark Davidson. He picked up on the second ring. Mark, it's Richard Coleman. I need you to prepare something for me. A complete financial accounting of every dollar I've invested in Ashley's life over the past 15 years. College tuition, apartment down payment, car, furniture, monthly allowances, everything. I want dates, amounts, receipts. Richard, what's going on? Let's call it a teaching moment. Can you have it ready by Monday? I'll have it Monday morning. Anything else? Yes. I want to formally restructure the trust terms. From now on, any distribution to Ashley requires my written approval. No more automatic access. There was a pause. That's your right as trustee. I'll draft the amendment. Thank you, Mark. My second call was to Sandra Miller. We'd worked together at the bank 10 years ago before she left to start her own private investigation firm. Smart woman, excellent at following money trails. Sandra, I have a job for you. Richard Coleman, it's been a while. What do you need? Background check on someone named Troy Clarkson. Mid-30s, runs a digital marketing agency called Apex Digital Solutions in South Park. I want to know everything. His business finances, personal debts, credit history, who guarantees his loans, everything. How fast? I'll pay for rush service. 72 hours. You'll have it? This personal? Very. Then I'll be thorough. I hung up and sat back in my chair. Through my office window, I could see the afternoon sun filtering through the oak trees in my backyard. The same trees I'd planted when Ashley was 5 years old. She used to play under them, building fairy houses out of acorns and leaves. That little girl wouldn't have called me a pathetic failure. But that little girl was gone, replaced by someone who valued appearances over substance, money over loyalty, Instagram perfection over genuine connection. Time to show her what real power looked like. And unlike Troy's manufactured success, mine was built on 35 years of actual work. Monday morning arrived with clear skies and sharp sunlight. I was at Mark Davidson's office on South College Street by 8:30, sitting in his conference room with a view of uptown Charlotte's skyline. Mark slid a thick folder across the mahogany table. Here's everything you asked for. 15 years of financial support, documented and categorized. I opened the folder. The first page was a summary. Coleman Family Trust. Ashley Marie Coleman, Financial Distribution, Summary Education, Duke University, 2011-2015. $127,000 our first apartment down payment. $45,000 vehicle purchase, Honda CR-V, 2021. $31,200 furniture and household items. $18,750 wedding expenses, deposits and payments. $68,500 monthly allowances. $500 X 48 months. $72,000 miscellaneous support, emergency funds, gifts. $15,000 total financial investment. $327,450. I stared at that number. $327,450. More than most people make in 5 years of work. And Ashley had spent it without a second thought, probably without even tracking where it came from. Mark, this trust restructuring, how quickly can we implement it? I can file the amendment today. It'll be legally effective by end of business. After that, Ashley won't be able to access any funds without your written authorization. Do it. He made a note. Richard, I have to ask, is this about the wedding? It's about respect. She's 32 years old, Mark. Old enough to understand that money doesn't materialize out of thin air. That somebody worked for it, saved it, invested it. That when you tell that somebody they're not welcome in your life, there are consequences. Fair enough. He closed his legal pad. The amendment will be filed by noon. I left his office and drove to a coffee shop downtown, ordering a black coffee and settling into a corner table. This was the waiting part. The part where you let the pressure build before making your next move. My phone rang at 11. Ashley. Dad, we really need to talk. I'm listening. Troy's parents offered to help. His father, Robert, said he can cover some of the wedding costs, but we're still short about $15,000 for final payments. Dad, please. I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have sent that message. Can we move past this? Move past this. As if 15 years of financial support could be erased by a casual apology over the phone. Ashley, here's what I want you to understand. I'm not angry. I'm disappointed. There's a difference. Anger is hot and temporary. Disappointment is cold and permanent. You chose to side with a man who called me a failure rather than defending the father who gave you everything. I know. I'm sorry. Troy said, what Troy said doesn't matter. What matters is that you agreed with him. You believed him. So now you're going to learn something about value. Real value, not the Instagram version. What does that mean? It means the accounts stay frozen. It means you figure out this wedding on your own. and it means you start understanding that respect isn't optional. I hung up before she could respond. That afternoon, I went home and did something I rarely do. I played chess online, found a worthy opponent rated about 1900, spent 2 hours in a complex middle game that eventually led to my victory through patient positional play. Chess teaches you that rushed decisions lead to defeat. You wait, you observe, you calculate, and then you strike at the exact right moment. Wednesday morning, Sandra Miller called. "Richard, you're not going to believe what I found." "Try me." Troy Clarkson is drowning. His company, Apex Digital Solutions, revenue of about $220,000 last year, but expenses of $407,000. He's got a business loan of $187,000 at 9% interest that he's missing payments on. 3 personal credit cards maxed out at $67,300 total. And here's the interesting part. He got a $95,000 credit line 6 months ago to keep the business afloat. Who guaranteed it? His father. Robert Clarkson, the developer. Personal guarantee, full liability. I smiled. What else? The fancy office he rents in South Park, $4,800 a month, and he's 2 months behind. They're about to evict him. His BMW is leased, and he's late on those payments too. The guy's a house of cards, Richard. One strong wind and the whole thing collapses. What about Robert Clarkson? Now that's interesting. Legitimate businessman, built his development company from nothing. Worth about $8 million, mostly tied up in properties and ongoing projects. He's been bailing Troy out for years, but I'm seeing signs he's getting tired of it. Recent court filing shows he refused to guarantee another loan for Troy last month. Can you dig deeper into Robert? Current projects, loan applications, business vulnerabilities? I can, but that'll take another few days. You want the deep dive? Whatever it costs. You got it? Thursday morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. "Dad, please. We found money from Troy's parents, but we're still short $15,000 for final payments. I'm begging you." I was wrong. I'm sorry. I typed back, "Apology accepted. But money stays frozen. Learn to value what you had." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, "I hate you." I set the phone down. There it was, the truth beneath all the apologies. She didn't regret what she'd said. She only regretted the consequences. That evening I sat in my study with a glass of scotch, Macallan 18, a rare indulgence, and looked at the information spread across my desk. Ashley's financial history, Troy's debt profile, the wedding venue contract, trust documents, bank statements, pieces of a puzzle, slowly forming a picture. Troy wasn't just using Ashley. He was desperate. His business was failing, his lifestyle was unsustainable, and he'd seen my daughter as a lifeline, a woman with money in the bank, a father who'd always provided, a comfortable future without having to actually build anything himself. And Ashley, wanting so badly to be part of Troy's world, had given him access to everything. Probably told him it was their money, their savings, never realizing that every dollar came from her father's careful planning. The wedding was Saturday, 4 days away. They'd be scrambling now, probably fighting, definitely stressed. Troy would be showing his true colors under pressure. Ashley would be seeing the man she'd actually married instead of the image he projected. Good. Let her see. My phone rang again. Unknown number. "Mr. Coleman, this is Robert Clarkson, Troy's father. I don't believe we've met, but our children are getting married in a few days. I was hoping we could talk." Well, this was unexpected. "Mr. Clarkson, what can I do for you?" "Call me Robert. Listen, I'm not sure what's happening with Ashley's bank accounts, but Troy mentioned there's been some kind of freeze. My wife and I have covered what we can, but there are still outstanding payments for the wedding. I thought perhaps we could meet, work this out like reasonable adults." Reasonable adults. Interesting phrase from a man whose son had called me a pathetic failure. "Are you free Friday afternoon?" I asked. "Say, 3 o'clock? There's a coffee shop downtown, Emily's on Tryon Street." "I'll be there. Thank you, Mr. Coleman." Richard is fine. After I hung up, I poured another finger of scotch and walked to my window. The oak trees I'd planted were silhouetted against the sunset, their branches swaying in the evening breeze. Robert Clarkson wanted to meet. The father who'd been bankrolling Troy's fake success, who'd guaranteed loans for a failing business, who probably had no idea his son was a manipulative parasite. This was going to be interesting. I raised my glass to my reflection in the window. Here's to consequences, I said quietly. May they be educational. The chess game was entering its middle phase. I'd sacrificed a pawn, the wedding funds, to gain position. Now it was time to see how my opponents would respond, and I had a feeling Robert Clarkson was about to become a very useful piece on the board. The day before the wedding arrived with the kind of morning that makes you appreciate being awake early. 6 a.m. and my phone was already ringing. I'd fallen asleep around midnight after a chess match online. A solid win against a 1900-rated opponent from California who made the classic mistake of overextending his queen. The ringing hadn't stopped. I picked up the phone and actually laughed out loud. 73 missed calls overnight, added to the previous total. That made over 200 desperate attempts to reach me in the past week. 47 text messages, 12 voicemails. I made coffee, French press, the good beans from that roaster on Park Road, and settled into my favorite chair to listen to the messages while watching the sunrise through my kitchen window. Ashley's messages first. 28 calls. Her voice progressed from panicked to angry to desperate, to broken across the dozen voicemails she'd left. Dad, please pick up. Dad, this isn't funny anymore. Dad, I'm begging you. The last one, left at 3 a.m., was just crying. No words, just tears. Troy's messages were different, entitled anger giving way to barely controlled fury. You can't do this. This is illegal. My father's going to handle this. Interesting that he kept mentioning his father. Then there were the others. Ashley's mother, Julia, my ex-wife, called 8 times from Florida. Apparently Ashley had finally broken down and called her. The hotel manager called 3 times about payment issues. The wedding coordinator called twice. Various vendors all panicking about money. But the most interesting voicemail was from someone I'd never spoken to before. Mr. Coleman, this is Robert Clarkson, Troy's father. We haven't met, but our children are getting married tomorrow. It seems there's been some financial confusion. I've covered some of the wedding expenses, but there are still outstanding issues. Perhaps we could meet and resolve this like adults. Troy mentioned you've blocked Ashley's accounts. I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding that we can work through. His voice was measured, professional, diplomatic, the voice of a man used to solving problems with conversation rather than confrontation. I smiled. Robert Clarkson, the man who'd built a development empire from nothing, the man who'd been guaranteeing his son's failing business ventures, the man who had no idea his son was a parasite. At 10 a.m., I called him back. Mr. Clarkson, this is Richard Coleman. I got your message. Richard, thank you for returning my call. Relief flooded his voice. I was hoping we could sit down and talk about the situation. The wedding is tomorrow, and I'm available this afternoon. Say 3 o'clock? There's a coffee shop downtown, Amelie's on Tryon Street. Perfect. I'll be there. And Richard, thank you. I'm sure we can work this out. I hung up and spent the rest of the morning preparing. Sandra's report on Troy went into a folder. Mark's financial summary of my support for Ashley went into another. I dressed carefully, pressed khakis, button-down shirt, casual but put together. The meeting with Robert wasn't about intimidation. It was about information. Amelie's French bakery was busy when I arrived at 2:50 p.m., full of the usual mix of business people, students, and tourists enjoying their coffee and pastries. I ordered a black coffee and claimed a quiet table in the back corner. Robert Clarkson arrived exactly at 3. I recognized him immediately from the photos Sandra had included in her report. Tall, probably 6'2", with silver hair and the weathered face of someone who'd spent decades on construction sites before moving to an office. He wore expensive casual, polo shirt, pressed jeans, leather loafers that probably cost more than my entire outfit. He spotted me and walked over, hand extended. Richard? Robert, please sit. We shook hands. His grip was firm, practiced, the handshake of someone who made deals for a living. He sat down, ordered a coffee from the passing barista, then turned his full attention to me. First, let me say I appreciate you meeting with me. Troy and Ashley's wedding has been stressful for everyone involved. I imagine it has been. Troy tells me there's been an issue with Ashley's bank accounts. Something about them being frozen? They're not frozen. They're under trustee control. There's a difference. His coffee arrived. He took a sip, studying me. Trustee control. You're the trustee? I am. Have been for 15 years. The trusts I established for Ashley give her access to funds, but I maintain discretionary control until she turns 35. She's 32. And you've exercised that control? I have. Robert set his coffee down carefully. May I ask why? Troy mentioned there was some kind of disagreement, but he was vague on details. I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshot I'd saved, the text message from Ashley. I turned the screen toward Robert without a word. He read it, his expression not changing. But I saw his jaw tighten, saw his fingers grip the phone a bit harder before he handed it back. I didn't know about this, he said quietly. Neither did you know about this. I slid Sandra's report across the table. Your son's financial situation, his company's debts, the credit cards, the failed business model, the rent he can't pay. Robert opened the folder, and I watched his face as he read. Page by page, his expression shifted from curiosity to concern to something harder. Disappointment, maybe, or anger that he'd tried to suppress for too long. Where did you get this? I hired a private investigator. When your son called me a pathetic failure through my daughter, I decided to learn exactly who was calling me names. I see. He closed the folder, his hands flat on top of it. And the wedding? Troy told Ashley I would ruin it with my presence. I was uninvited to my own daughter's wedding, to the wedding I'd paid for in full. $68,500, not counting the 15 years of other support. So I stopped payment. Robert was quiet for a long moment. That text message, those aren't Ashley's words. No, they're Troy's words. My daughter is many things, spoiled, financially naive, easily influenced, but she's not cruel. Your son is? What do you want from this meeting, Richard? I want you to know who your son really is. Not the entrepreneurial success story he pretends to be. Not the self-made businessman. The truth. He saw my daughter as a bank account with benefits. He's been draining her funds for months. $47,200 that she thought were investments for their future. Robert's face had gone pale. How long have you known about Troy's situation? I found out this week, but I suspect you've known for years. He didn't deny it. Just sat there, looking older than he had when he walked in. I kept hoping marriage would mature him, that having a wife, building a life, would force him to grow up. Marriage doesn't fix people, Robert. It just locks you to them. What happens now? The wedding is tomorrow. The venue is paid for. I covered it. The guests are coming. Ashley's dress, the flowers, the food. I've handled all of it. $73,000. I nodded slowly. You're a good father. Better than Troy deserves, frankly. He's my son, and Ashley is my daughter, which is why I'm going to tell you something important. I leaned forward. The wedding will happen tomorrow. I won't stop it. You've already paid for everything, and canceling now would hurt Ashley more than Troy. But I'm coming to that wedding, Robert, and I want everyone there to see who I really am, who you really are. Not the pathetic failure Troy described. The man who spent 35 years building a career in banking. The man who managed an $847 million portfolio. The man who could have an opinion on, say, a $3.2 million development loan application. Robert's eyes widened, just slightly, but I caught it. You know, I continued, Charlotte's not that big of a town, not in banking circles. I'm sure your name will come across my desk eventually. Consultant work keeps me connected. He understood. Not a threat. I'd recuse myself from any actual involvement in his business. But a reminder that the world was smaller than Troy thought, and that the failure his son had dismissed actually had influence his son could never dream of. I'll be at that wedding tomorrow, I said, and Troy will learn a very important lesson about assumptions. Robert stood up slowly, extending his hand again. I'll see you tomorrow, Richard, and thank you for being honest with me. We shook hands. He left, carrying Sandra's report with him. I finished my coffee slowly, watching the afternoon crowd filter through the bakery. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. Very interesting indeed. My phone buzzed. A text from Ashley. Dad, please, just please. I typed back. See you at the wedding. Let them wonder what that meant. The Ballantine Hotel and Lodge sits on 500 acres south of Charlotte. All manicured lawns and old money elegance. I'd driven past it hundreds of times, but never actually attended an event there. Too expensive for my taste, but perfect for people like Troy who needed to project success. I arrived at 2:30, half an hour before the ceremony. The parking lot was already full, luxury cars mostly, BMWs, Mercedes, a few Teslas. I parked my Camry between a Porsche and a Range Rover and smiled at the contrast. The main ballroom was stunning, I had to admit. High ceilings, crystal chandeliers, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a lake. White roses everywhere, on the tables, in tall vases flanking the altar, woven into garlands along the walls. A string quartet played something classical in the corner. 160 guests milled around, dressed in their finest, glasses of champagne already in hand. I'd worn my best suit, navy blue, perfectly tailored, Italian leather shoes I'd bought for my retirement party. I looked good, distinguished, exactly like someone who'd spent decades in banking should look. The moment I walked in, the atmosphere changed. Not dramatically, but I felt it. Conversations paused mid-sentence, heads turned. Ashley's friends, Troy's business associates, relatives I'd met at various family gatherings, they all recognized me, the father who wasn't supposed to be here. Ashley saw me from across the room. She was standing with her bridesmaids near a side door, probably heading to the bridal suite for final preparations. Our eyes met. She went pale. Actually pale, like someone had drained the blood from her face in an instant. Her hand, holding a bouquet of white roses, started trembling. One of her bridesmaids touched her arm, concerned, but Ashley just stared at me. I gave her a slight nod, not friendly, not hostile, just acknowledgement. She disappeared through the side door in a hurry, her bridesmaids fluttering after her like confused birds. Troy was harder to find, but then I saw him near the front, talking to someone in an expensive-looking tuxedo. Even from across the room, I could see the Armani label. He was laughing, gesturing broadly, playing the role of confident groom. He hadn't seen me yet. "Richard," I turned. Robert Clarkson stood beside me, also in a well-cut suit. His wife Patricia was with him. I recognized her from Sandra's report photos. She was elegant, probably mid-50s, with that polished look that comes from regular salon visits and personal trainers. "Robert," Patricia. I shook her hand. Patricia's smile was uncertain. "Mr. Coleman, it's nice to finally meet you." "Likewise," Robert's voice was low. "Troy doesn't know you're here yet. I thought it best not to warn him." "Probably wise. I spoke with him last night about his financial situation. It didn't go well." "I imagine not." The wedding coordinator appeared, a stressed-looking woman in her 40s with a headset and clipboard. "Everyone, please take your seats. The ceremony will begin in 5 minutes." The guests began filing into rows of white chairs, arranged in front of the flower-covered altar. I waited, letting others go first. Robert touched my arm. "Richard, whatever happens today, thank you for showing me the truth about my son." I watched as he and Patricia walked to the front row. Then I found a seat in the back, not the father of the bride's seat in the front row that should have been mine. The back row, where I could see everything and everyone. The string quartet shifted to the wedding march. The bridesmaids processed down the aisle in their pale pink dresses. Then came Ashley. She looked beautiful. The wedding dress, $8,400 according to the invoice I'd seen, was stunning. Lace and silk, classic and elegant. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless. She looked like every bride's dream of herself, except her hands were shaking so badly the bouquet quivered with each step. Her eyes were red-rimmed, like she'd been crying. When she reached the altar and turned to face Troy, I could see her chest rising and falling with rapid, panicked breaths. Troy, on the other hand, looked like he wanted to vomit. He'd seen me now. Probably the moment I stood up when Ashley entered. His face had gone through an impressive range of colors, normal to red to pale to a kind of grayish-white. His smile was frozen, artificial, like someone had stuck it on his face with glue. His eyes kept darting to me in the back row, then to his father in the front, then to Ashley, then back to me. The officiant began the ceremony. I stopped listening to the words. I was too busy watching the body language. Ashley's voice shook when she said her vows. She stumbled over words, had to repeat a line twice. Troy's hands were gripping hers so hard his knuckles were white. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. This was not the joyful ceremony anyone had envisioned. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Troy pecked Ashley's lips so quickly it was barely contact. Then they turned to face the guests, supposedly the happy couple, and I saw Ashley's eyes find mine. The look on her face was pure misery. The reception was even better. Dinner was served, some kind of fancy chicken dish that probably cost $40 a plate. The champagne flowed. The string quartet gave way to a DJ playing tasteful dinner music. Robert Clarkson stood to give his toast. The room quieted. "Friends and family," he began, raising his glass. "Today we celebrate the marriage of my son Troy and his beautiful bride Ashley. It's a day of joy, of new beginnings, of two families coming together." He paused, and I saw his eyes find me in the crowd. "It's also a day to acknowledge those who helped make this moment possible." Ashley's father, Richard Coleman, has been a constant presence in her life. He paid for her education, helped her establish herself, always supported her dreams. "Richard," he turned fully toward me now, "you've raised a wonderful daughter. Your dedication to her over the years, it speaks to your character. Thank you for being here today." The room applauded, but I noticed some people looking confused, whispering to each other. Wasn't the father of the bride supposed to give a speech? Why was the groom's father talking about him like this? Troy's jaw was clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. Ashley looked like she might faint. After dinner, I was standing near the bar when Robert approached, with a group of men in expensive suits. Business associates, clearly. "Gentlemen, I want you to meet someone. This is Richard Coleman, Ashley's father. Richard, this is Michael Thornton. He's with Thornton Development. We've worked together on several projects." Michael shook my hand. "Coleman, that name's familiar. Are you in development?" "Banking, actually. Retired from Truist Bank a couple years ago, but I still consult on large commercial loans." Michael's eyes widened. "Richard Coleman from Truist. I know that name. You worked on the South Park expansion financing back in 2020. "I did. That was brilliant work. The structuring on that deal was exceptional." Other businessmen gathered around, and suddenly I was in the center of a conversation about banking, development, loan structures, interest rates. These were Robert's professional circle: developers, investors, contractors, people who understood exactly what a banking consultant with my background meant. And Troy overheard it all. I watched him from across the room, watched his face as he realized that these men, his father's successful business associates, were treating me with respect, asking my opinions, laughing at my observations about the local market, exchanging business cards. His expression went from confusion to realization to something that looked like horror. The pathetic failure he'd dismissed was networking with the very people he'd been trying to impress for the past year. Ashley approached near the end of the evening when most guests were on the dance floor. She looked exhausted, her makeup fading, her hair coming loose from its perfect styling. "Dad," she said quietly, I don't know what to say." I looked at her, really looked at her. She was 32 years old, married to a man who'd used her, standing at a wedding her father had been uninvited to, but that her father-in-law had paid for. "You don't need to say anything tonight, Ashley, but we will talk, soon, about everything." "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix things, but it's a start. We'll talk next week, after your honeymoon is canceled." "What? You think Troy can afford a honeymoon right now? With his business collapsing and his credit cards maxed out? No, Ashley. The Instagram version of your life is over. Now you get to see what reality looks like." I walked away, leaving her standing there with tears streaming down her carefully made-up face. As I drove home that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not satisfaction, exactly. Not victory. Something more complex. Justice, maybe. Mathematical, precise, exactly calibrated justice. Troy had called me a failure. Now he knew exactly who I was. Ashley had chosen his version of success over my years of support. Now she'd learned the difference between appearance and substance. And me? I'd shown up to a wedding I wasn't wanted at and reminded everyone that respect isn't about Instagram followers or fancy offices. It's about what you build over decades of honest work. The chess game was far from over. but I'd just won a very important middle game exchange. The call came 2 days after the wedding. I was having my morning coffee, reading the financial section of the Charlotte Observer, when my phone rang. James Wilson, my former colleague at Truist Bank, now vice president of the commercial lending division. Richard, I need your input on something. What's up, James? We've got a loan application on my desk. Robert Clarkson, you know him, right? Development company, solid reputation. He's requesting $3.2 million for a new commercial complex in South Park. Standard stuff, but given the amount, I wanted to run it past you. You still consult on large commercial loans, and you know the local market better than anyone. I set down my coffee cup very carefully. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of irony worthy of a Greek playwright. Robert Clarkson, I said slowly. Yes, I know him. We just became family, actually. His son married my daughter this past weekend. There was a pause. That's quite the coincidence. Does that create a conflict of interest for you? It might. Let me think about this, James. When do you need a decision? Next week would be ideal. The project timeline is tight. I'll get back to you. After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, watching the sunlight move across the floor. $3.2 million. Robert's newest project, probably something he'd been planning for months, maybe years. A loan that needed bank approval, consultant review, and a stamp of legitimacy from someone like me. And I was now his son-in-law's father-in-law. Family, whether either of us liked it or not. I called Robert directly. We need to talk, not about Ashley and Troy, about your loan application. My loan application? Confusion in his voice. How do you know about... Because Truist Bank just asked me to review it. I'm one of their senior consultants for commercial lending. $3.2 million for the South Park development, correct? Silence. Then, this is a conflict of interest. That's exactly what I said, which is why we should meet, today, if possible. We met that afternoon at the same coffee shop where we'd talked before the wedding. Robert looked older, more tired. The past week had clearly taken a toll on him. I'll recuse myself from your loan review, I said immediately. I'll tell James that our family connection makes it inappropriate for me to be involved. Your application will be reviewed by other qualified consultants, and it'll stand on its own merits. Robert nodded slowly. Thank you. That's professional of you. But I want you to understand something, Robert. Your son married my daughter. They're living in a luxury apartment they can't afford, driving cars on leases he can't maintain, projecting a lifestyle built on debt and my money, and now they're married. I've talked to Troy multiple times since the wedding, and he's defensive, angry. He thinks you're trying to destroy him. Robert rubbed his face. I went through his company's books myself. You were right. It's worse than I thought. The business is hemorrhaging money, and he's been using Ashley's accounts to cover his losses. $47,200 over 8 months, I said. I had my investigator, Sandra Miller, excellent woman, pull the detailed transactions. Ashley had no idea. She gave him access to a joint credit card, thinking it was for household expenses. He was funneling it straight into his failing business. What are you going to do? What would you do, Robert, if your son had deceived someone you loved? He was quiet for a long moment. I'd make sure they learned the truth and face the consequences. Then that's what I'm doing. Ashley needs to see who she married, and Troy needs to understand that calling someone a failure doesn't make it true. Meanwhile, Sandra delivered her final report. I read it that evening, sitting in my study with a glass of scotch, the good stuff, the Macallan I saved for special occasions. Troy had been systematically draining Ashley's accounts since they got engaged. Not all at once. Small amounts at first, 500 here, 800 there. Business expenses, he'd call them. Then larger sums as his company sank deeper. The $95,000 credit line his father had guaranteed was nearly maxed out. The 3 business credit cards were all 30 days past due. His office rent was 3 months behind now. The man was drowning, and he'd grabbed Ashley as a life raft. I called Ashley the next morning. We need to talk about Troy, about money, about what's really been happening. Dad, I don't want to hear another lecture. This isn't a lecture. This is information you need to see. Today. My house, 2 o'clock. She came alone. Troy, apparently, was dealing with business emergencies, probably creditors calling based on Sandra's report. I had everything laid out on my dining room table: bank statements, credit card bills, withdrawal records, a forensic accounting of exactly where Ashley's money had gone over the past 8 months. She stood there, staring at the papers, her face cycling through emotions like a slot machine: confusion, disbelief, anger, hurt, finally, devastation. "He told me these were investments," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "For our future, for the business. He said once the company stabilized, we'd be set." "Ashley, his company isn't stabilizing. It's collapsing. These weren't investments. They were emergency payments to creditors, office rent, credit card minimums. He was keeping his business on life support with your money. $47,000. She picked up one of the statements, her hands shaking. "I didn't even notice. I trusted him. That's what manipulators do. They make you feel guilty for questioning them. They convince you that trust means not asking questions." I paused. "Sound familiar?" She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something break in her expression. The text message, about the wedding. Those were his words, weren't they? He told me what to say. He said you wouldn't understand our relationship, that you'd try to control us, that we needed to establish boundaries. And I just believed him. Yes, I called my own father a pathetic failure. Tears were streaming down her face now. I uninvited you to my wedding, and the whole time, you were the one paying for everything. You were the one supporting me, and I chose him over you. I wanted to comfort her. That's what fathers do. But she needed to feel this, needed to understand the weight of her choices. "So what do I do now?" she asked. "I'm married to him. I can't just—" "You can do whatever you choose, Ashley. That's the point. You're 32 years old. You can make your own decisions. But you need to make them with accurate information, not his lies. Those accounts? Still frozen. Will remain frozen until I see evidence that you understand how money actually works, where it comes from, what it costs, how to protect it. Dad, no? I'm not your ATM machine anymore. I'm not the backup plan when Troy's schemes fail. You want access to those funds? You learn financial literacy. You learn to budget. You learn to recognize manipulation. And you learn that respect isn't optional. It's earned and it's reciprocal." She left an hour later, carrying copies of all the financial documents. I watched her drive away in that Honda CR-V I'd helped her buy, and I wondered if she'd ever really understand what I'd been trying to teach her. But at least now she had the information. What she did with it was up to her. That night, I added a new piece to my watch collection, a 1920s Omega pocket watch I'd been eyeing for months. Paid for with money I'd earned, saved, invested wisely. Money that represented 35 years of showing up every day, making sound decisions, building something real. Not Instagram success. Real success. The kind that doesn't disappear when the likes stop coming. Troy's counterattack came 3 days later. I was in my backyard trimming the hedges when a courier arrived with legal papers. Official documents from Ramirez and Associates, attorneys at law. Troy was suing me for unlawful restraint of marital assets and financial coercion. The letter was aggressive, full of legal threats and 48-hour ultimatums. Release Ashley's trust funds immediately, or face civil action. The tone suggested Troy had found a lawyer as overconfident as he was. I called Mark Davidson, my attorney. He arrived within the hour, read the documents, and actually laughed. "Richard, this is the legal equivalent of a tantrum. Kyle Ramirez, I know him, young guy, thinks every case is a dramatic courtroom battle. He's way out of his depth here. Can they force me to release the funds? Not a chance. The trusts are ironclad. You're the designated trustee with full discretionary authority until Ashley turns 35. Every document is properly executed, notarized, filed with the appropriate authorities. I made sure of that 15 years ago. So we let them sue? We let them try. This'll get dismissed at preliminary hearing. Might even get Ramirez sanctioned for filing a frivolous lawsuit." Mark grinned. "Actually, this is perfect. Let Troy waste money on legal fees, while we demonstrate to a judge exactly how thoroughly you've structured these trusts." The hearing was scheduled for the following Monday at the Mecklenburg County Courthouse. I arrived early, wearing my court-appropriate navy suit, carrying a leather folder with all my documentation. Troy and Ashley were already there, sitting with their lawyer, a young man in an expensive suit that probably cost more than my car payment. Kyle Ramirez had the aggressive energy of someone who watched too many legal dramas. He kept gesturing emphatically, whispering strategy to Troy, who looked like he hadn't slept in days. Ashley wouldn't meet my eyes. The judge was Patricia Henson, mid-50s, stern expression, reputation for no-nonsense rulings. She reviewed the documents quickly, then looked up at all of us over her reading glasses. "Mr. Ramirez, you're alleging that Mr. Coleman is illegally restricting your client's wife's access to her own funds?" "Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Coleman has frozen all of Mrs. Clarkson's bank accounts in retaliation for a personal disagreement. This is financial abuse, pure and simple." "Mr. Davidson?" Judge Henson turned to Mark. "Your Honor, these aren't Mrs. Clarkson's accounts. These are trust accounts established by Mr. Coleman 15 years ago, with himself as trustee. All documents are in order. Mrs. Clarkson has always had supervised access, not ownership. The trust clearly states that full control transfers at age 35. Mrs. Clarkson is currently 32. Judge Henson flipped through the trust documents. "Mrs. Clarkson, did you understand the terms of these trusts when you were using the accounts?" Ashley stood up slowly. "No, Your Honor. My father just gave me credit cards. I didn't know about the trust structure." "So your father provided you with access to substantial funds, which you used freely for years, without you ever asking about the legal structure of those accounts?" Yes. "And now you're upset that he's exercising his legal rights as trustee?" Troy jumped up. "Your Honor, he's doing this to punish us. He wasn't invited to our wedding, so he's using money to control." "Mr. Clarkson, you're not a party to this suit. Sit down." Judge Henson's voice was ice. She turned back to the documents. "Mr. Davidson, these trusts are properly structured?" "Completely, Your Honor." "And Mr. Coleman has legal authority to manage distributions as he sees fit?" "Until Mrs. Clarkson turns 35, yes. That's exactly what the trust stipulates." Judge Henson closed the folder. "Then this is a family dispute, not a legal case. Mr. Coleman is operating within his rights as trustee. Lawsuit dismissed. Mr. Ramirez, consider yourself warned about filing frivolous suits. Next time, read the actual trust documents before wasting the court's time." The gavel came down. Over. Done. We walked out of the courthouse into afternoon sunlight. Troy was red-faced, arguing with Ramirez on the courthouse steps. Ashley stood apart from them, looking lost. Mark clapped me on the shoulder. "That went even better than expected. Ramirez looked like he'd been hit with a brick." "Thanks for handling it." "That's what you pay me for. Though I doubt this is over. Troy strikes me as the type who doesn't accept defeat well." He was right. That evening, Ashley and Troy had a fight loud enough that neighbors called building security. I know because Ashley called me at 11 p.m., crying so hard I could barely understand her. He's furious. He's saying you've destroyed everything, that we can't pay rent, that we can't afford anything. He's screaming that this is all your fault. "Ashley, stop. Listen to me. This isn't my fault. This is Troy's fault. He built a lifestyle he couldn't sustain, used your money to prop it up, and now it's collapsing. That's not my doing. That's consequences. But what am I supposed to do? You're supposed to wake up. You're supposed to see who you married. You're supposed to stop letting him make you the victim of his failures. I can't just leave him. I just married him. Then don't leave him. But stop enabling him. Stop being his bank account. Stop letting him manipulate you. Grow up, Ashley. You're 32 years old. Act like it." I hung up. Probably harsh. Definitely necessary. The next day, Sandra called with an update. Troy's business is being evicted from his office space. 3 months back rent. Finally caught up with him. The landlord filed formal eviction papers yesterday. "How long does he have?" 30 days. But Richard, there's something else. He's been contacting his father's business associates, trying to drum up investment money, telling them the business just needs a cash infusion to stabilize. He's getting desperate. Desperate people make mistakes, and Troy was about to make several. The chess game was entering its final phase. All the pieces were positioned. The end game was in sight, and I knew exactly how it would end. Robert Clarkson called 3 days after the courthouse disaster. His voice was measured, careful. "Richard, I'd like to host a family dinner. All of us. You, Ashley, Troy, my wife Patricia, and Julia. Ashley's mother is flying in from Florida." "Julia's coming?" That was interesting. My ex-wife hadn't been involved in Ashley's life much since she'd moved to Florida 15 years ago. "Ashley asked her to come. I think your daughter is starting to see things clearly. But we need to address this as a family. Wednesday evening, if you're available." "I'll be there." Robert's house in South Charlotte was exactly what you'd expect from a successful developer. Elegant without being ostentatious. Expensive without being gaudy. Real wealth, not the Instagram version Troy tried so hard to project. Julia arrived first, greeting me with the awkward politeness of two people who'd once loved each other, but now barely knew each other. She looked good, Florida sun agreed with her, but I could see the guilt in her eyes when she looked at me. "Richard, thank you for coming." "Julia." Ashley and Troy arrived last, and the tension was immediate. Troy's face was haggard, dark circles under his eyes. Ashley looked exhausted, thinner than she'd been at the wedding just 2 weeks ago. They weren't holding hands. We gathered around Robert's dining room table, mahogany, probably worth more than my car. Patricia had prepared a full meal, roasted chicken, vegetables, the kind of dinner that's meant to feel welcoming, but tonight just felt like a stage for uncomfortable truth. Robert stood at the head of the table, raising his wineglass. "I brought us all together because our children got married. That makes us family, whether we like it or not. But there are problems we need to address, honestly, without games or manipulation." He turned to Troy. "Son, I had my accountant audit your company, the full audit you've been avoiding for 2 years. You're in debt, $254,000. Your business is insolvent, and you've been using Ashley's money to keep it afloat without telling her." Troy's face went red, then white. "Dad, I'm not finished. You also convinced Ashley to uninvite her father to the wedding. You used words like a pathetic failure to describe a man who spent 35 years building a respected career, a man who paid for his daughter's entire education and supported her for 15 years, all while you were building a house of cards with borrowed money." "I was trying to build something," Troy's voice cracked. "Everyone expects me to be like you, but every time I try, you judge me." "I judge dishonesty, Troy. I judge manipulation. I judge using other people's money while pretending it's yours." Robert set down his wineglass. "I'm not guaranteeing any more loans. I'm not bailing you out again. From now on, you sink or swim on your own merit." Troy stood up so fast his chair scraped across the hardwood floor. "This is because of him," he pointed at me, his hand shaking. "He's been poisoning you against me. He showed up at the wedding like some kind of—" "Like a father," I said quietly. "Like someone who'd been invited but then uninvited with a cruel text message. You want to talk about cruel? You froze Ashley's accounts. You humiliated us. I exercised my legal rights as trustee, something you would have discovered if you'd bothered to ask Ashley about the financial structure of those accounts before you started spending her money." "Our money? She's my wife." "Money I earned, I saved, I invested, and I placed in trust for my daughter's future, not for your failing business, not for your BMW lease, not for your fake success story." Troy looked around the table wildly, searching for support. He found none. Patricia looked away. Robert's expression was granite. Julia was watching Ashley, not him. "Troyson," Robert's voice was heavy, "you need help. Professional help. Financial counseling, maybe therapy, and you need a real job, not this fantasy of being a startup entrepreneur when you have no capital and no viable business model. A real job, like working for you, being your employee. Is that what you want? To humiliate me in front of everyone? I want you to be honest, to work, to earn, like Richard did, like I did, like every person who actually builds something real instead of an Instagram illusion." Silence fell over the table. Then Julia spoke for the first time, her voice soft but firm. "Richard was the better parent. I need to say that out loud, in front of everyone." She looked at Ashley. "I left when things got hard. I moved to Florida to find myself and left you with your father. He never complained. He never asked me for help. He just did what needed to be done, day after day, year after year. He paid for everything, supported everything, and never demanded credit or gratitude. Ashley started crying quietly. Julia continued, "And now I fly back and find out you uninvited him to your wedding? That you called him a failure? Ashley, honey, your father is the definition of success. Not money, though he managed money better than any of us, but character, integrity, showing up. That's success." Ashley's voice was barely audible. I know that now." I set down my fork carefully, looking at my daughter. "Ashley, you asked what you should do. Here's what you do. You grow up. You start making decisions with your eyes open. You learn what money actually means. Not the number on a screen, but the hours of work, the sacrifices, the choices that money represents. You learn to spot manipulation, and you decide, consciously, what kind of person you want to be." "I want to be better." She was looking at me now, tears streaming down her face. "I want to be like you." "Then start with honesty, with yourself and with Troy." Troy stood frozen, looking at all of us like we were strangers. Then he walked out of the room. We heard the front door open and close. Nobody went after him. Robert sighed heavily. "That went about as well as I expected." Ashley looked at me across the table. "Dad, can we talk? Just us?" We stepped out onto Robert's back patio, overlooking a pool that reflected the evening sky like dark glass. "I was horrible to you," she said. "Not just the text message. For months before that. I let Troy convince me you were holding me back, that you didn't understand our lifestyle, that I needed to set boundaries. But really, I was just being spoiled, and ungrateful, and easily influenced," I finished. "That's the part that concerns me most, Ashley. Not that you made mistakes. Everyone does. But that you let someone else dictate your values, your decisions, your treatment of people who love you. I'll do better, I promise. Promises are easy. Actions are what count. So here's what happens next. I'm going to teach you how money actually works, how to budget, how to invest, how to recognize when someone's using you. And then maybe we'll talk about unfreezing some of those accounts." "Thank you." She hugged me, and for the first time in over a year, it felt genuine. "Thank you for not giving up on me." I held my daughter and looked up at the darkening sky. Justice, I thought, wasn't about revenge. It was about teaching the right lessons at the right time, even if those lessons hurt. The next few weeks moved like a slow-motion landslide. Inevitable. Inexorable. Exactly as I'd planned. Troy's office got evicted. His business equipment was liquidated to pay back rent. Apex Digital Solutions quietly closed its doors. Its social media going silent. Its website replaced with a temporarily unavailable message that everyone knew meant permanent. Robert followed through on his ultimatum. Either Troy accepted a real job in his company and attended financial counseling, or he was cut off completely. Troy, broken and desperate, chose the former. He started as a sales associate, not manager, not director, just associate, earning $52,000 a year. For someone who'd styled himself as an entrepreneur, as someone destined for greatness, it was a bitter pill. I watched his social media transform. No more photos of luxury cars and rooftop bars. No more hashtags about grinding and success. Just silence. Digital humiliation for a man who'd lived online. The accounts stayed frozen for another month while I met with Ashley 3 times a week. We sat at my dining room table with spreadsheets, budget templates, and trust documents. I taught her what I should have taught her years ago, that money isn't magic, it's mathematics. That lifestyle is a choice, not a status. That financial security comes from making thousands of small, smart decisions over decades. She was a surprisingly good student once the Instagram filter came off her life. She asked questions, took notes, admitted when she didn't understand something. It was like watching my daughter emerge from a fog she didn't even know she'd been in. Troy and Ashley moved out of the View luxury apartments. Their new place was in a modest complex near the airport. 2 bedrooms, 900 square feet, $1,400 a month. They sold Troy's BMW X5, keeping only Ashley's Honda CR-V. Ashley canceled her Pilates membership, her premium subscription boxes, her monthly salon appointments. It must have felt like falling from a great height. but I didn't feel particularly sorry for either of them. The turning point came on a warm evening in early June. Ashley came to my house alone. "Troy moved out," she said without preamble. "We're separating." I wasn't surprised. "Are you okay?" "I don't know. Maybe." He couldn't handle the downgrade. Kept saying I was killing his dreams, that if I'd just asked you to unfreeze the money, we could get back to normal. She sat down on my couch, looking exhausted, but somehow more solid than before. "But I didn't want to go back. I finally understand what you were trying to show me. That wasn't normal. That was a performance. This," she gestured around my comfortable, modest living room, "this is normal. This is real. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. Maybe divorce. Maybe therapy. Maybe just time to figure out who I am without someone telling me who I should be." She looked at me. "But I want to keep learning. About money. About planning. About everything you've been teaching me." I pulled out the folder I'd prepared. "Then let's talk about your 3-year plan." We spent 2 hours going through it. At 35, 3 years from now, Ashley would inherit full control of $237,000, what remained after wedding costs and Troy's theft. But between now and then, she'd learn to manage a budget, to save, to invest small amounts, to track spending. I'd partially unfreeze her accounts, giving her $2,000 a month, enough to live modestly, but not enough to fall back into old patterns. "And if I do this right?" she asked. "If you do this right, by the time you're 35, you'll understand exactly what that money represents. You'll know how to make it grow, how to protect it, how to use it wisely, and you'll never let anyone manipulate you with money again." She signed the revised trust documents without hesitation. After she left, I sat on my back porch with a glass of scotch, the good stuff, Macallan 18, because some moments deserve celebrating. The June evening was perfect, warm without being hot, and the oak trees I'd planted when Ashley was 5 were swaying gently in the breeze. My phone buzzed, a text from Ashley. "Dad, Troy and I are enrolling in a financial literacy course together. It starts Monday. He needs it more than I do, but we both need it. Thank you for everything," I replied. "Proud of you, Ashley." And I was. Not because she was fixing her marriage. Honestly, I thought that ship had sailed. But because she was finally growing up, finally taking responsibility, finally understanding that respect and gratitude aren't optional extras in life. They're the foundation. I thought about that text message from a month ago. "You're a pathetic failure." Troy's words, but Ashley's finger that pressed send. Justice, I'd learned, wasn't about making people suffer. It was about making sure actions had consequences, about teaching lessons, about not letting betrayal slide just because it came from someone you loved. The evening air carried the scent of honeysuckle from my neighbor's yard. My watch collection sat on its shelf inside, 43 mechanical timepieces, each one representing patience, precision, the value of things that last. My favorite, the 1887 Longines, was ticking steadily, just as it had for over a century. Justice is like that watch, I thought. It doesn't rush. It doesn't miss a beat. It just keeps moving forward, one precise tick at a time, until the right moment arrives. Troy had called me a pathetic failure. Now he was working sales for his father, living in a modest apartment, facing the reality that Instagram success and actual success are different things. Ashley had pushed me away. Now she was learning that the person she'd dismissed was the one who'd always had her back. Robert had covered the wedding. Now he understood exactly what kind of man his son was. And me? I was sitting on my porch, financially secure, self-respect intact, watching my daughter finally learn the lessons I'd tried to teach her through example, but that she'd only absorbed through consequence. Perfect mathematics, exact justice, no revenge necessary, just natural consequences playing out as they always do when you let them. My phone buzzed again, another text from Ashley. "I love you, Dad. I'm sorry it took me so long to say it and mean it." I smiled. "Love you too. See you Monday for our next lesson." Because that's what fathers do. We teach, we guide, we forgive, eventually. But we never forget that love without respect is just another kind of manipulation, and support without boundaries is just enabling. I'd spent a month showing Ashley and Troy that actions have consequences, that words have weight, that betrayal has a price. Now they'd spend the rest of their lives learning to be better people, and I'd spend mine knowing that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just refusing to be anyone's doormat while teaching them to stand on their own feet. Justice served, lesson learned, life moves forward. I raised my glass to the oak trees, to the setting sun, to the future that stretched out ahead of all of us. Mathematical, precise, exactly right. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching,